Hello, I want to walk through how you'd find scholarly exegetical articles using the Dehon Library's resources. Now, what we're going to look at is the databases that are found through the library's catalog system. But just before we begin to talk about the nature of academic journals, here's an example, which is the Catholic Biblical Quarterly. Behind me are the hard copies of the journals that we subscribe to. On the lower level shelves, the level I'm at, you'll find the most recent versions from the last year. As you can tell from the title, this is a quarterly. It comes out 4 times a year, so here's the 4 volumes from this past year. Once these are a year has been completed, then they are bound into hard copies and then placed above my shoulder here at the second level of the library. You'll see where they are kept, and you can see here, they're simply bound together. Now, as we move to digital resources, and these are less likely to get lost, the individual ones, we don't always bind all the versions anymore, since we have the repository of many of these journals digitally. And that's a big change from prior to the value of having PDFs of all the different articles up from the journals. So it's much easier to find the articles because you can use databases, since many of the articles, not all, many of the articles are available in digital form. So what I'm going to do is walk through how you use the library to find these resources. And so to do that, I'm going to start here at the school's website. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find here the Sacred Heart portal, which you're probably well familiar with, and then you go to the Dehon Library. First thing you want to do is sign in, hit my account. This will be important because this gives you access to the materials that you desire and want to use. Now, it automatically recognizes me by the fact that I've no, it doesn't. Sorry, take that back. Have to hit sign in again. Now they'll recognize me. It automatically has my information placed, but notice here you have to do this click on the right hand side, and what you want to make sure is your name appears here, because this will give you the access to the different resources. Up until now you're a guest unless you sign in, and you won't have full access to everything you want. Now we're here. Once we've done that, we're actually brought to this home page of the databases. Now the first database I want to talk about is the ATLA database. This is the database that is created by the Association of Theological Libraries of America. So basically it's collecting the different publications that relate to theology. Not just Catholic, but more broadly, obviously. But it's still more refined than maybe a humanities database. So this is a good place to start, and you're to use this resource. So if you click on the database, now you could simply type in, if I can type right, the biblical book and the chapter that you want to look at, or even the pericope. You could narrow this down and give verse numbers, but for now I'm just going to use a chapter, and then hit search, right? And there we go. I've collected a number of things. In fact, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that I have 5 pages of material. Now, what we want to look for at this point, this is helpful if you want to find books on this topic. You can see there's discussion here of books, as it says here, books. But what we are interested in is scholarly articles. And in this database, they talk about those as academic journals. Well, we have 5 pages. We can actually refine this if we go to advanced search, and we'll refine this search in a couple of ways. There we go. First is we'll use a bowline term. I have on the Populi site a sheet that explains bowline terms, how you use them. But actually in basic search you could use these bowline terms, but we'll add in another term, which will be covenant. This "and" here will say that once Jeremiah 31 and a reference to the word covenant. And then we'll refine this. Let's say we just want things in full text. so in other words, PDFs of the articles available digitally. We want to have scholarly peer-reviewed articles. This is one way that articles are, in fact, identified as scholarly versus non-scholarly, or at least there's a differentiation between peer-reviewed articles and non-peer-reviewed articles. What are peer-reviewed articles? Well, this is a methodology by which journals, academic journals, ascertain whether or not this submitted manuscript is valuable or worthwhile publishing. The manuscript is sent out to other biblical scholars who are experts in the field discussed in the article, and they make a judgment to the editor about, yes, this is worth publishing, it's worth, or, no, it's not, or it's worth publishing if these things are done to improve the text. These panels can vary from 1 to 3 people. Some are what are called blind, which means the reviewers don't know who the author is who submitted the article. Some aren't. So there's different kinds of peer review, but basically any kind of peer review journal is seen as a scholarly resource. So we want to click scholarly peer review journals because that's what you're supposed to generate here in this exercise. Then we could put in, if we said, oh, I want real recent things, I could put a start date, here. If I decide, oh, I don't want anything older than 2000, year 2000, what have you, you could just put that year in there. But we're not going to do that. If I want to restrict it to a certain journal, like the Catholic Biblical Quarterly, I could do that by sticking it in this box here. But we're going to go down here and then pick our language. Again, if you know other languages, you may not want to do this, but just for our convenience, we will simply say we want just anything written in English, and then please not Middle English. I don't think you'll find much if you ask for that. And then we want articles, right? We don't want books for this because we're looking for exegetical articles. We don't want essays. Now, we don't want reviews. Reviews would be book reviews. Obviously, if you're doing various projects, you may want those kinds of resources. But for our purposes, for this exercise, we're only going to look at articles. So that pretty well gives us a nice narrowing of our search. Again, this is all through the advanced search button. And then we simply say, because we can click up above here, search, or down here and hit search, right? And what do you see? But here now we've gone from 5 pages to 2 pages. And everything is related to our identified topic of covenant. Now, one thing is, for this exercise, you're to identify exegetical articles on your pericope. In this case, it's the pericope is Jeremiah 31. You can see that just from the titles that some of these things may not be focused upon Jeremiah 31 per se, an exegesis of that text. For example, here it's about Jewish apocalypticism in Hebrews 8. So actually it's focused on Hebrews 8, the biblical letter, the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 8. It may talk about Jeremiah 31, but it's not really focused primarily on chapter 31 in Jeremiah. This one is, but you may want to recognize that it may be dealing with more than just Jeremiah. It may be dealing with a broader topic that really isn't focused upon the exegesis of the text. Now, how would you find that out? Well, you'd have to click on PDF full text here, and now the article would be pulled up. And you'd have to read through the article, at least a portion of enough to figure out, oh yeah, this is relevant, or no, it isn't. This is really talking, more about, you can see here they're talking about New Testament, and in fact, this is actually talking more about New Testament issues than it is about the Old Testament interpretation of this text. So we would want to, oops, don't want to do that. Having some trouble with my program here. Come on, there we go. Okay. So that's one of the limitations of the Atlas services. Don't really know what this article is about other than through the title, right? Now here you could see, if we go down a little farther, sometimes we can click on these articles, and let's see, let me find it. Here's a good one. We'll click here. Sometimes the articles have what's called an abstract. And so you could read through the abstract, a little short description of the article, and you say, oh good, this is applicable to what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of this, what the material I'm trying to find, and so therefore you could use it. All right, now we're going to talk then about how do you maybe use another resource that would help you discover what's relevant and not relevant without having to click on every single article, and particularly if the article doesn't have, like that first one, doesn't have an abstract. So what we're going to do is then use another resource. If we go back, actually we can just go back here, and this is right where we landed after we logged in, our list of databases, and now we're going to go down to the Old Testament abstracts. And there's also the same database, type of database for New Testament books. But here we're in Old Testament abstracts, and now let's, just to vary it up, let's use Ezekiel 36. And now here I could again use bowline terms and say and, or you know, there's ways you use quotation marks, other things to kind of narrow down your search. But I'll just leave it here with 36 for now. And I'll click in search, and here we go. Again, I found a lot of articles, right? 3 pages worth, or materials, books here. You can see there's books. And again, if you're doing a broader research paper, you may want to find books dealing with the topics relative to this biblical passage, but we're looking for articles, so we can go to advanced search again. What's nice about the Old Testament abstracts is you could simply, they provide you with the narrowing down boxes. So here's the and you can change this if you say or not. Again, if you read the article about the use of bowline terms, you'll understand how to use them more effectively. But so you know, if I wanted to just put in covenant here, I could. I'm not going to for this moment, for this exercise. But you know, if you want to narrow your search to a more specific topic, but here again, I can say peer reviewed, right? So that's click their box. I won't click full text at this point. I could if I wanted to just have things that would have the PDFs attached to them. And again, I'll click, article, and then my language, which will be English. Here they don't give you Middle English, thank goodness. And then I'll say search. Now I've gone from 2 pages to 1 page. Now what's different within the Old Testament abstracts is that they talk about, they don't use the term academic journals, they use periodicals. Contra to what we saw there in the Atla, where when they use the word periodicals, they're talking about more popular resources. Still may be academically oriented, but they're more, they're not necessarily articles that are peer-reviewed. Here in Old Testament abstracts, they don't make that distinction in terms of language. You click the box, and now they've only picked peer-reviewed materials. But you can be confident this is peer-reviewed, this is scholarly research, and you can see there are a number of articles. Now, the value of this resource is every one of these entries, if you click on it, it provides you with an abstract, which is, you do not get abstracts in Atla. And so it gives you a little description of the article and say, oh, that work, you know, I want to use that article. Or no, that's not really applicable. You know, again, you might click the PDF, and it might also still have an abstract like this one does. But as we saw in the previous example with Atla, sometimes they don't have at the beginning of the article a little description. But these will always have, if you click on the link, always have a little description of the article, so you can figure out if it's applicable or not. You know, here I go with another one. See, another little abstract. So that helps you narrow down what's valuable or not. Now, I did not click here that everything should be digitally available. But let's say you're going through this this list, and you end up saying, "Oh boy, there's an article that I'd really like. I've read the abstract. Let's see. Let's just pick one out for fun. Okay, idols and land grabs. Right. Let's just click on that. Now, it does not have check for full text. I click on that. It's not available. Oh, rats. I really wanted to read that article. Well, there's a way around this. which is simply that you would, let me get out of here. I have a complication, which is that, there we go, come here, there we go. The complication is that the program I'm using has a menu, and if I click on it, it does some things I don't want that to do. So sorry about some of these delays here. But now what you would do if you wanted this article, it's not available digitally. It's not available in our holdings either. Well, that'd be wrong. We actually do carry Horizons. And so you could look this up. But let's say you found an article that's in a journal we don't hold, right? Now you could, again, if you looked at this and it's not available digitally, you could then, and we do have it in our holdings, then you could come and get it in hard copy. But let's say this article is not available in hard copy, and so you could do is take down the title, the author, the journal article, I'm sorry, journal title, and then the issue number, the year, and the pages. That's all you need is this material. You don't need all the material down below here. You just need, basically the source. Because the next thing you could do, if you so desired, is you could go back to, again, our landing page here once we logged in. And if you go to the top, you see an ILL request. That's an interlibrary loan request. You clicked on that. You could fill in that information again, just the title, the article title, the journal title, the year. You don't need the month or day, just the year is published, and the volume number. You don't even need the issue number, and the start and end page. And then you hit submit. Now what it'll pop up is another screen. It says, do you want, because you could find something, you say, boy, we should own this. Then you could put in a request that we purchase this because you think it's good enough, something valuable enough for us to own in our library, and the librarians could look at that and make some assessment. Here we're not worried about that. We're just going to click on request from another library, and then if you had filled out that first page, all this would be filled in. Now you could actually just click into this field and just put in the title and the journal article, as well as ideally you'd give them also the page numbers. So you can see the start is the very minimum you have to offer, but ideally to help them out, you'd fill in these pages. So you can see how you don't even need to have author in this field here. And then once you do that, you would click send request. And then what would happen is the librarians will send this to a library that does have that journal in their holdings. They would scan it and then email it back to our library, and then they would send it to you. So that's really convenient because in a couple days you could get this article even though it may not be in our holdings. Okay, so we've done this little exercise so we can get out of there. So we've seen the ATLA database service. We've looked at the Old Testament. Let's see, where's my abstracts? And again, we have a New Testament. This is the same thing, just with the books of the New Testament. Now I want to go up here to the Biblical Archaeological Society Library. This is another nice resource that I want you to get familiar with. And if you click on this database link, then you'll see this is basically the association. It's actually a for-profit organization. So this is the Biblical Archaeological Society publishes a number of resources. What they're most famous for is the Biblical Archaeological Review, which is often called BAR, for using its initials, BAR. And you could go down here. I'd say this resource is most helpful if you're not necessarily searching for passages, because of the nature of this journal, right? This periodical, is that it's not trying to do exegesis of specific passages usually, but rather it's trying to look at the archaeology. So this is much more helpful if you want to take a deeper dive in some of the material within a passage that might relate to social customs or to certain figures, or things that might be accessed through archaeology. So I'm going to use a word that pops up in chapter 51 in Isaiah, and there's a figure called Rahab. And you probably maybe done your looked up that term. You're a little confused, and you've looked that up in your Bible dictionary. You know that Rahab is a sea monster figure in the ancient Near East, and so you've typed in Rahab. You're going to wait for it to access. Uh-oh, what's happened? Well, there's also some other figures in the Bible, human beings who are named Rahab. The one we're probably most familiar with is the prostitute at Jericho who helps the Israelites conquer, that helps the spies who've been sent ahead to get a sense of the town of Jericho, and she helps them out, if you remember Rahab's story. Or we've picked up those references too. So again, we may want to go back and narrow this, and now in this search you can use again bowline terms. It actually works pretty well if you just don't have to use the bowline terms. You just put in monster here because it's a sea monster, right? Now hit search, and now we get articles that are more specifically related to this figure called Rahab, who's a mythological figure in the ancient Near East. And then I can pick an article here to kind of find more out about that figure and how it relates to what's been discovered through archaeology. Okay, so that's how you use the BAS resource. All right, so those are just 3 databases that I think you could find helpful in writing an exegetical paper and discovering more information about your passage as you try to determine the proper interpretation of the passage of the pericope. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much. Good luck.